Hello folks, how are we? Hope you're all well. Um, Another whiskey review by me, Marty Macaulay. Just thought I would come and do this one because it's not really the sort of thing I would normally do. Now, most people who listen to me know that I don't have a great love affair with bourbon, mostly. Because most of the ones that we would get in the UK tend to be very, very, very sweet. And that's not really my kind of thing. But since I've been here in the States for a little while now, we've been trying out we've been experimenting, doing a few more things that I probably would be not as au fait with, certainly wouldn't have drunk a huge amount of, and can be a little bit hard, certainly would be hard to get back in the UK. So I got this. Now, where I got this is as important as the drink itself in many ways, because I got this at the Grand Canyon. It was on sale. I had arrived up. In case you have never been to the Grand Canyon, it's a massive big hole in the ground. But when I got there, I couldn't see it because there was a cloud inversion and it snowed. So it was basically just filled in. So I couldn't see nothing. Now, going for something to eat was quite tricky because the snow was coming in quite heavy. And we drove up a little bit. You had to drive because you couldn't have walked. Drove up. The road had been cleared, but it was snowed again and it was sort of cold. And I happened upon this in the shop, in the gift shop. And I bought it. And I had a couple of drinks that night to keep the old cockles warm, keep yourself nice and warm. And because we were staying up there, at the Grand Canyon. Now, this was $24.69 because it's on the back of it here, and you add in a bit of tax or whatever. It was about $25 roughly. And I thought to myself, this is exactly what we need. We need a little bit of whiskey to keep everything running okay. Now, my hopes for it weren't high. I thought to myself, it's just a wee drink, just to have a little drink up here because it's so cold, and it was really cold, by the way. So I thought to myself, right, we'll have a little whirl with it and give it a whirl. I'll give it a try, and we'll report back on it. But being the price it was, you're not expecting much. But to be honest, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And but what I mean by that is, a lot of these whiskies in the States are young. The climate doesn't lend itself really to having massively aged whiskies. This is there's not a huge amount of information on the back of it, other than it's handcrafted and bottled by the Canyon Diablo distillery in Flagstaff, Arizona, very near to the Grand Canyon. And the Canyon Diablo distillery talks about it being the toughest hellhole in the world. I'm not really sure what that means. So they must need strong whiskey, good whiskey, to keep them on the straight and narrow and stop them falling into the Grand Canyon or something. I don't know. But there's a couple of little things to like about this. One, it's a nice story in the back of it. It tells you a bit of about John Wesley Powell, who was the first. Led the first proper expedition to explore the Grand Canyon, down it, and so on and so forth, down the Colorado River. That's 1869 to 71, which is quite nice. Nice to have a little bit of history, because you're buying this at the store, and that's kind of what you want. But it's also 42%, which gives you an indication that they've actually took a little bit of care with it. Or they've thought, well, why is it 42%? Keep it a little bit higher ABV. It probably tastes a bit better at that, or they think it tastes a bit better at that. But there's care and consideration has went on there. Now it's sharp on the nose. There's no two. I mean, it's quite sharp, but it's pleasant and it's sweet without overdoing it. And it says on the website that it's aged at least 6 months. Now this is for people in the UK and in Ireland and so on. That's a chronically short period of time. But what I would say is it's probably helped that this is young, that it hasn't aged that long and in a cask, because it's sweet enough. It doesn't need any more sweetness. It's light, it's easy to drink. There's nothing wrong with this at all. I mean, it's actually quite oily in the glass. I mean, you can see there's loads of that light, the corn bourbony-esque, the vanilla's there. It tastes like sort of sweetened popcorn without being over egging the sweetness. Again, there's no real finish to it. I mean, it basically just drops off in the finish, but that's easy enough to drink. And I know quite a lot of people are probably quite like this. Wouldn't necessarily be my cup of tea. But in terms of being a bourbon, an easy drinking bourbon, one that you could very easily use as a mixer, use in a cocktail, absolutely no problem with that, and it would probably serve very, very good for doing that. But you can drink that straight. You know what I'll do? I'll put a little touch of water in it. Now, it's not that oily. It's confusing a little bit because it's got quite a nice mouthfeel. But when you put water in it, you don't see any of the oil separating out. But the mouthfeel's quite good. It's light on the tongue. It's easy. There's no finish with it, but it's not expensive. So it's got really good points and some downsides. As a cheap whiskey, there's nothing wrong with this. And I'm always all for people bringing out spirits, especially stuff that you can buy at an area event or a place or whatever, and be an easy drinking. You know, plenty of people will have this sitting on the shelf at home and probably never drink it because it reminds them of where they were. All I know is when I got to the Grand Canyon, it was snowing out in the heavens. It was also bitterly cold, and this was extremely pleasant. Now, does that influence my decision a number of weeks after the event? Well, probably yes, but that's a good thing because it's supposed to tell a story. I have a story I can talk about. Oh, got a bottle of bourbon. It wasn't great, but it was hit the spot just where I was at the time, and it was just nice. And you don't need an expensive whiskey to have a nice story to tell. Again, quite sweet. Mouthfeel's alright. A little bit of the water actually takes any of the sharpness that was there kind of out of it, brings it down and lets it flow as easy as a Colorado River. The likes of this, and there is lots and lots of good bourbons. I'm going to do a few reviews of stuff that I've got here in the States that I can't really get back home. Until there's lots of this stuff coming. We'll be seeing more and more of this in the UK and in Ireland as it starts to filter out of the States, and be prepared for it, because don't be writing it off. The likes of this is a little bit gimmicky to be sold up there. But I'm a sucker for gimmicks. There's nothing wrong with them. It shows that people actually put in a little bit of effort and care and concern, and are actually worried. They're not worrying particularly, but they're wanting to be engaged with their customer, which is quite all right with me. So if they're being slightly gimmicky and selling this Grand Canyon bourbon at the Grand Canyon, well, I'm all for that. I think it's a good thing. If I have to give it a score, it's a bourbon. It's a little bit different, but I'd quite happily give that sort of 6.5 out of 10. Again, I'm not giving scores of things really sort of. It can be sometimes a bit detrimental to me and to the whiskey, giving it a score. But I think people give it, that's a barometer. It's about 6.5 out of 10. But if you have it of an evening when it's about -10 and the snow's whistling, it's been snowing all day, and you're freezing cold, I guarantee you it's more than a 6.5 out of 10. Now, if I'm marking that personally, I mark that an awful lot higher because it means a bit more to me. So yeah, give it 6.5 out of 10. But if that's an indication of what the Canyon Diablo distillery can make for a very, very, very reasonable price, I'm going to have to maybe see about at some point finding out what else they make, because it could be quite good. Yeah, so anyway, all the best. Do take care of yourselves, and hopefully I'll see you later. Take care.